Right, good evening, everyone. It's great to see so many of you here tonight. And my name is Tom Hyam, and I'm really delighted to welcome you all to this keynote talk tonight from the HEAS Forschungsverbund, the Human Evolution and Archaeological Sciences Forschungsverbund, based here in Vienna. I'd also like to briefly mention that that we are a large network. We have research partners and other institutions, including the Naturhistorisches Museum Wien, the Austrian Academy of Sciences, plus the many departments and groups that we have here in the University of Vienna that are involved in our HEAS network. I'd also like to mention my fellow board members and the heads of HEAS, Professors Ron Penhazi, Immo Trinks, and Barbara Horisch. And I'd also like to acknowledge our past head, Professor Gerhard Weber, who did such an amazing job for the first 2 years in getting this wonderful collective moving. HEAS is growing. From our official start in October 2021, we now have more than 40 PIs and dozens of postdocs, senior scientists, students, as well as associate members. Our international outreach grows by the day, and we welcome more and more people to join us in exploring the latest research and science in these exciting fields that we work in. For those of you joining online, welcome. We aim to make all of our speaker and seminar events hybrid so that we can share as widely as possible all of this exciting research from visitors and from HEAS researchers, whether they be colleagues, fellow scientists, or interested members of the public. Anyone who might be interested is welcome. If you're not yet signed up to our newsletter, please do so online at heas.at so that we can keep you up to date with new events and announcements. We've got some really exciting things coming up over the next few months, including our 3 seminar series, which run through till June 2024. Our soon-to-be-announced HEAS podcast, which is going to be super great. It's coming soon. Workshops and many more events. So keep up to date with us through social media and our newsletter, please. Now, the keynote address is one of the most important events for HEAS, where the members of the network choose one outstanding international scientist to share with us their latest research and insights. Today's speaker is following in big footsteps. Previous keynote addresses have been given by Professors Ernst Pernitzka, Katarina Havati, Mirjana Roksandich, and latterly by Chris Stringer. We're really excited tonight to welcome another top researcher to talk to us, and I'm going to hand over to Immo Trinks in a second to introduce him properly. Before I do this, may I remind everyone that following this talk, we'll have some questions, and there'll also be a drinks reception in the kitchen upstairs on the 5th floor of this building in room 5020. So you'll be able to come up there and we'll have the doors open for those of you that don't actually have access usually. This is an opportunity to talk more to our speaker on the research topic and socialize a bit. I finally want to thank Maeve Nick Samradane, Fabian Siegel, Martin Dockner for helping us with the organization of this event. Now I'd like to hand over to Immo.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Archaeological Science keynote lecture hosted by the HEAS Research Network of Vienna University. It is my great pleasure and honor to introduce our speaker for today, Professor Johan Rönnby from Sweden. Professor Rönnby is one of the world's foremost experts in the field of maritime archaeology. Born in central Sweden, he has dedicated his scientific career to exploring and revealing the secrets hidden beneath the surface of the seas, investigating archaeological cultural heritage found on the seafloor, as well as humans' cultural and societal interactions with water. Johan Rönnby stands out not only as professor of maritime archaeology at Södertörn University, that is some 20 kilometers south of Stockholm Center, but he is also the head of the Maritime Archaeology Research Institute, MARIS. From Viking Age lake dwellings, harbors, and prehistoric landscapes underwater in the Baltic Sea and the Stockholm archipelago, to expeditions in the Arctic, as well as deep water archaeology in the Black Sea, his pioneering work has been marked by groundbreaking discoveries and insightful interpretations. Professor Rönnby has significantly contributed to our understanding of uniquely preserved shipwrecks, as you will see by yourself today. Since 2014, he has been a National Geographic explorer, investigating the maritime battlefield of the flagship HEAS that sank in 1564 offshore the Swedish island of Öland. He and his team generated stunningly precise 3D models of the wreckage located in 70-meter depth, using hundreds, if not thousands, I believe, of underwater photographs. And I'm certain we will hear more about that fascinating work in a minute. Johan is a distinguished editor and contributor to significant academic works on early modern maritime violence and warfare. His expertise is not just limited to academia, but as a skilled diver, he has personally explored the depths of these seas, providing a unique perspective to his research. By bringing together scientific as well as commercial surveys and experts in underwater exploration and discovery, he has opened a new window into the past. Tonight, Professor Rönnby will delve into deep water archaeology, the investigation and interpretation of uniquely preserved shipwrecks in the Baltic and the Black Sea. Please join me in warmly welcoming Professor Johan Rönnby. I hand over to you.
Sorry, Amy. Do I have to press something there? So, great. Thank you very much for that introduction. I'll see if I can live up to half of it in this lecture. But first, of course, thank you for the invitation to come here to HEAS and to Amy. I'm of course very honored by that, and nice to see you all here today. Yes, I hope that goes away on the top there, but let's see what happens. Yeah, I'm then Johan Rönnby, and I'm based at Södertörn University, and that's Stockholm, Sweden. Shit. So. Yes, I've been working with underwater archaeology since the middle of the 1980s, and a lot of that have been diving, as ordinary diving as a person. And there is quite a lot of advantage of doing that, to be able to visit the site and to be there as yourself as diver. But diving as a diving, there is a limit of that. If you come deeper than 30 or 40 meter, diving gets quite complicated. And if you get deeper than 100 meter, it's almost impossible. And then you have to do something else. And today's lecture will be about that hard thing, when you go deeper than ordinary diving. That's what I'm going to concentrate on today. So it will be quite much about techniques and methods and how you actually work underwater. But I just want to say as a start that I always think it's very important, especially when you speak about methods and technique, that you remember why you do it. And archaeology is about humans in the end, or humanity if you want. And you always have to has that in mind. So my lecture will be a little bit about the context to what we have done also. And I think it's important to have that in mind all the time when you go deeper, so to say. We will speak about. I will concentrate on three different things. Two shipwrecks up in the Baltic, 1 and 2 on the map there, and also some shipwrecks down in the Black Sea. And of course, the Baltic and the Black Sea are very different in some aspects, but they have something in similar, and that's that they preserve shipwrecks in a unique way. I have for many years said that the Baltic Sea is the best place in the world for shipwrecks. I've changed that now and say the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea is the best place in the world for shipwrecks. So. we will actually start with number 1 up there, which is in the middle of the Baltic Sea, close to the island of Gotland. To give you some context to this wreck, this guy, Gustavus Vasa, up to 1522, the Nordic countries are joined together in the Nordic Union. Denmark, Sweden, today's Norway and Finland is one country with one king. But in 1522, Gustavus Vasa breaks the Swedish part out from this union. A lot of you probably recognize the name Vasa from the Vasa ship in Stockholm from 1628. But Vasa is the family name. It's like the Tudors in England or Habsburg in Vienna, but even if another scale for the Vasa compared with the Habsburg. But it's the family name. So the Vasa ship in Stockholm is actually built by his grandson, Gustavus II Adolf, using the family name as name of the ship. Gustav Vasa, I mean, he breaks the Swedish part free then from the Union, and in Swedish history writing, he's the big hero, really. In the nationalistic Swedish old history writing, he's the big hero who creates the modern Sweden. And that is, of course, to simplify the whole thing. But you can see him as a quite a good example of kings and princes in Europe during this time, because there is a period of state building going on during the 16th century in Europe, all over Europe. And the kings are doing new things in the new states, a lot of new things. But one of the things they're doing is to build new ships, new fleets to the new countries. And Gustav Vasa does exactly the same thing. And a very strange thing is that this new, small, very poor nation up in the far north are actually during the 16th century building very, very large wooden ships. Some of the biggest in the world, and maybe some biggest in the world for some periods. And that's a little bit strange. But the simple explanation is that they didn't have any, they were ruling quite alone. They had no competition really for power. So he could actually use all the resources for shipbuilding for this period. In 1560, Gustav Vasa dies, and his son Erik is the new king. Erik chooses the name 14 after, just to brag. He wants to show how old Sweden is and how many kings have been before. He should, of course, be the first, really, but 14 sounds much better. He also wants to beat his father, so he starts to build a new warship, bigger than his father's, Gustav Vasa, and brand new, the biggest one ever, and called that ship Mars Matchless sometimes. A very big ship, but in 1564, when the ship is really on the first mission, it's out. It's a battle against the Danish fleet. It sinks, explodes, and sinks. And people have been looking for this for many years without finding it. But in 2011, a diving group, Ocean Discovery, which today is colleagues to me, many of them, actually found this on the side scan sonar. They have been searching with side scan sonar for years on the seabed between the islands of Öland and Gotland. But when they got this image on the sonar, they realized that they have found something very big and very well preserved. And when they put the diver on the site, they could confirm that this was Mars. We formed very quick after this research project, together with Ocean Discovery, but also together with a lot of other institutions, as you can see there. We've been working on Mars since then, since 2012, and we are still working. We're actually planning a new field season now next summer. Mars is on 70 meters. you are able to dive on Mars with ordinary divers, even if it's complicated. So we have been using divers on Mars most of the time, and especially when we started up this investigation. But if you dive on 30 meters, you can't do it on ordinary air. You need to use mixed gas diving. So maybe we have been using premix. You take to reduce the nitrogen you put helium instead in to be able to survive down there, really. You can do that in the open system. You can carry a lot of tanks with you, and you can shift tanks and so on. That works. But you can also use a rebreather where you have a small computer. It takes care of the mix thing. So that's what most people do today with mixed gas diving. And the divers here has mixed gas diving equipment on, as you can see. Sorry. The first thing we did was do a photo mosaic of Mars. And this is how it looks on the seabed. This is around 900 or 1,000 still shots done by diving then on 70 meters depth. And of course, on 70 meters in the Baltic, it's pitch black. It's pitch black on 20 meters, so it's very black down there. So it's a lot of pictures put together to create this picture on the seabed. But what you can see here is Marsden, a gigantic ship. Some of you probably know about Mary Rose. This is a ship double the size of Mary Rose. So 60 meter long, maybe 200 ton, something like that. So it's a really, really big wooden ship laying on the bottom, much bigger than the Vasa 6028. You can also see on the picture the explosion, because as I said, it was an explosion in the forepart of the ship, and it's lacking here. So we are trying to pick up parts of it far away from the main site. We were very happy about this photo mosaic, but we soon decided that we also should try to do a 3D documentation of the site, and we still did that with divers. Much more photos put together for a 3D model. I will come back to the 3D recording a little later in the lecture, so I'm not going to say so much about it. But we realized after being working for 3 years with taking photos here that this is a very complicated system to do with divers. So today, Ocean Discovery together with us have developed a system to take a ROV to a robot instead and take all the photos with a robot. That's much easier, really, and that works very well also. But I will come back to this later. Should be a small. So this, you can actually put the 3D glasses, VR glasses on, and you can really dive on yourself on the site on 70 meters in the Baltic. You can see the size of the whole thing when you can see how small the diver is. This 3D animation is done by Ingmar Lundgren in Ocean Discovery, who works very close to us these days with quite a lot of timbers, as you can see in a big wooden ship like this. Yeah, and this 3D documentation is, of course, fantastic to have when you try to do a reconstruction of this ship. And it's I'm not going to go into this in details at all today, but shipbuilding during the 16th century is really, really interesting, because this was the first generation of the big ships in post-medieval Europe, and people really didn't know how to build big ships, so they were experimenting to how to do it. So there is a lot of strange thing in the shipbuilding during this century. During the 700s, the 1600s. People have learned much more about how to build ships, but here's this still tries really how to build these big ships. So we can learn a lot about that from Mars. But there is one more aspect I want to mention, and that is that coming down on Mars on 70 meters, you actually it's not just a ship, it's also a frozen battlefield. It's a battlefield you meet down there. You use the big guns are sticking out there. There are big bronze guns. Some of them have exploded because they were so hot when they came down in the water, because it's just in the middle of the fighting it went down. The timbers are still black. If you take them up, it smells from the smoke and so on. And there are also pieces of humans laying all around. So you're really visiting a battlefield, is 16th century battlefield, and coming quite close to it as a diver. And I think that's quite an interesting aspect, and we have been writing about how you can use that feeling discussing war in general and warfare today, really, that you can visit the battlefield so close. Yeah, but I don't say more about that today. Now we are moving to the next wreck in the Baltic. I want to just show you very quick. And now, as you can see, we are just in the middle of the Baltic now, between Estonia and Sweden. And the depth here is 120 meters, a little bit too deep for ordinary diving. So this is beyond personal diving. We found this by side-scan sonar, as you can see here, and we immediately, when you get the sonar picture like this, you have the whole hull, you have the mast still sticking up, you realize that it's something very well preserved on the sea bottom. 70-meter depth, deep, as I said, is deep in the Baltic, and we have been using then remote operated vehicle, or ROV as they are called, robots for all the documentation. There is benefits of that, of course, because you can have a lot of cameras, you can have lights on them, and they can work for hours compared with the divers. And you can sit in the control room and drinking coffee and having a nice time. So there is good things with this also. And it's not like diving, but sometimes you always feel that you're down there, really, when you're sitting on the monitor and follow what happens. You can always step on board on the ship. We soon realized when we got the first camera on the ship and could see that this was a ship that we recognized from paintings and so on, because this is the Dutch float ship from around 1680, from 1680s. The Dutch float ship was trade ships. They were really the backbone of the Dutch economy during the 1600s. Very, very important for the whole Dutch economy. And as you can see in this picture, the flat stern here is lacking there, but otherwise it's a complete ship. It's not a wreck. It's a ship standing on the bottom. And that's the reason why we called it the ghost ship, because it was like a ship still sailing on the seafloor. One of the first things we met, actually, when the robot we came to the side of the ship and went up and looking into the ship, was this guy standing there. So for the first time for 500 years, these guys met the light when the camera was in their face. And this is knights, they're called knights, on the deck of the ship. You put rope around them for the rigging and so on. So with their faces very... we wanted to do a documentation of this ship with a multi-beam sonar, which you can put underneath a ship. There, multi-beam are fantastic to map the seafloor. You can get a very good map over the seafloor. But if you want to have details, especially on 120 meters, the multi-beam, if you mount it on the ship, is too long away, really, to get details. So we tried to put the multi-beam on an ROV and move the ROV down to the ship and scan the ship with the multi-beam. And that's the model we got. which was quite fantastic, really. Because you got a lot of details. It's not on this shot, but the sonar or the sound went down through the deck, so you actually could see deck levels also. We could slice the ship and see different layers from the sonar. It's quite, if you see, it's quite fun to see the seafloor around it, because you can actually see what happens when it came down and hit the floor, that it just flowed down the seafloor for a while before it stopped, really. You can also see that the masts are still there on the multi-beam. It's not that sharp, but you can see that the masts are still in place. With the camera down there, we could also investigate details. This is quite an interesting detail. It's a so-called hookman, or oops, wrong one. That one. The corner figure here in the stern, dressed like a nobleman, like a very rich tradesman from Amsterdam or something like that. It's like a guy you can meet on the portraits or Rembrandts or something like that. And he's dressed the same way, where he lays on the seafloor. His hair is curly hair and a big hat and a nice jacket on. We actually salvaged that with the ROV. We managed to lift that up to the surface very carefully. In the back of the ship, there is the windows into the cabin, the small cabin. And we were very interested to see what's inside the ship also, and try to film inside the cabin. So we made a small mini ROV and put that one, and put it beside the big ROV, and that took that down to the bottom and tried to get inside the ship. It worked well for 10 minutes, then it was floated. So it didn't work anymore. So we had to do something else. So we took the ROV up to the surface, and then we put the camera on a long stick instead. So we could move the stick inside the cabin and actually film inside the cabin. And what we saw then inside the ship was a small room, 3 by 6 meters big, very low, in the roof was very low. You couldn't stand right. You had to bend yourself inside this room. It was a little bit untidy, but you could see a table and some coffins and so on. So you can really visit this small room. And we know that small float ship from this period had quite a small crew. There were 6-7 persons and a captain, and that was the whole crew. And this was the only place on board where you had shelter. So everybody was here. They were sleeping here. They were eating here. They went to the toilet here together, because you had a way to do it with a hole in the side. So this was the room where people met, or where you did everything. They had the prayers in the morning here, and everything. So we are really visiting the 17th century, the 7th century room. I'm not going to. It's another lecture also, but I think it's quite fascinating, because to have that, to be able to visit a cabin from this period, and if you consider what's going on and the Dutch mentality during this period. It was a moral or a working spirit in the Dutch society, who said that you should work very hard, you should stay on your place, and do what God has decided you to do. And I think the persons in this cabin was living that life, and they had the captain who took care of everything on board. There's a famous study, which I suppose several of you have heard about, by Max Weber, a famous sociologist, who says that this was really the spirit the spirit of capitalism, really, who opened up the modern capitalist, that people was thinking like this. I think that is to simplify things a little bit, but capitalism is more complicated than that. But I still think it's quite interesting that you actually can visit the cabin of capitalism. Yeah, we leave that now. We actually we have called it the ghost ship, but we think we know the name of this ship, even if we haven't found it in written sources. Because behind the ship we found this the wooden thing. I don't know if you can see what it is. You can try to guess what it is. But if you see here, then it's actually a swan. It's the body of a swan on the seafloor there. So this was typical for the Dutch fleet ships. You actually had a picture on here. You didn't have the name written. You had a picture instead. So this ship was probably called the Swan, or the Amsterdam Swan, or the White Swan, or the Black Swan, or something like that. Yep. Now we're leaving the Baltic Sea. There are thousands of wrecks in the Baltic Sea. So I just want to say that. So there is a lot of other wrecks to speak about, but we are leaving the Baltic Sea now and visit the Black Sea instead. And what I'm going to talk about now is a project, a very big project who we started 2015. And actually, it's the University of Southampton who really who was in charge of the project. It was my old friend and colleague, John Adams, Professor John Adams, who was in charge of the project. But we were a group of people working together with John as co-directors from the Bulgarian Institute of Archaeology, from Södertörn, from University of Connecticut, and also from Greece, Hellenistic Center. Working very close together. And the vital part of this work was also the cooperation with the Swedish company MMT, which actually I already had been working then on the ghost ship with. So that was the reason why MMT was contracted for this project. And that meant that we actually used a 90-meter big survey vessel down in the Black Sea for 3 years, which was quite unique for underwater archaeology to have all this offshore equipment to work with. This was the head instrument for searching as in the Black Sea. It's an ROV, but a very special ROV. MMT called it Surveyor Interceptor. Just the name is quite cool, I think. But it is really cool because it actually drives in 6 knot speed beside the ship. You have a multi-beam on it. You have, of course, echo sonar. You have cameras. You have laser. It does everything really in 6 knots speed, and it works 24 hours around. So it's just changing crew, and it's mapping the bottom and search for shipwrecks really for 24 hours around. Yep. Here is a small film showing. This is a survey vessel then. Quite a big boat. And that's a Surveyor Interceptor. When we used this then in 2000, first time in 2017, I think it was, then there was just one in the world of this, because this was the first. Now there are a couple of them, but and then it dives, and then it takes almost half an hour before it reached the sea floor. Because I didn't say that on the map, because there is a big difference between the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea, of course, and that the depth. Because in the Baltic, it's 100 or 200 meters is the limit, but in the Black Sea, it's several kilometers. So when interceptors are diving now, it's actually diving down 2 kilometers down in the water, 2,000 meters down to the seafloor, and that takes half an hour down to the bottom. So it's a quite long way to go. That's the survey, just showing the survey area, how we have it. Trying to cover as much as possible. There is a shelf around in the Black Sea, and then if you go down the shelf, it gets much deeper. While we then had found a wreck, we found more than 60 shipwrecks during the expedition, 60 old shipwrecks, I should say. While we had found we took the position, of course, and then we went back to that site, and then we stopped the boat, and then we put down another ROV, a working class ROV, a bigger one with much more cameras and electrics and cables and so on, down to wreck, and then we use that for high resolution footage or 3D documentation. And all the equipment, all the information was then just going up to the boat and in the hard drives on the computers on the boat. There, some of the computer guys are working with it. It takes a little bit this time to process all the information, while the rest of us can go for a swim for a couple of hours. But then after a couple of hours, you actually get an image of the wreck on the seafloor. 2 kilometers down on the seafloor, you get a full image of the wreck. We even had just a small show how this footage works. We take the ROV takes very many several thousands pictures like this all around the site. Makes builds up a point cloud, a dense point cloud, and then you also get the mesh and the texture on it, as you will see on the following pictures here. We even had a 3D printer on board, so we actually could also print the wreck on board. So let's say one day after we actually found a wreck 2,000 meters down on the Black Sea, we could actually have a printed model standing on our tables. I think that was quite cool also. In this case, it's a small galliot. One of my colleagues, Dragomir Garbov, have identified that as a galliot Katarina from 1958. It's one of the few which we actually have identified, because the other ones are older, so we don't have an identity of them. Sorry, that's the 3D printing of the galliot. Like in the Baltic, you have the mast still standing. This is another one, so-called Bombard, early 19th century ship, also almost identified by Dragomir, extremely well preserved. But most of the ships we found was actually from the Ottoman period. And you probably know quite a lot about the Ottoman period in Vienna, but for me it was quite an eye-opener to work with the Ottoman period. It's a fantastic period, really, and goes on then from the conquer of Constantinople in 1453, really up to the end of the First World War. And the ships, the sailing and the trade on the Black Sea and also the Mediterranean, of course, was extremely important for the Ottomans. So they had a lot of boats during a long time. One thing we have seen by working with the Ottoman, that the Ottoman shipbuilding was quite conservative. The oldest ship we have found from the early 17th century up to the late 19th century are quite similar. There are differences, of course, but there is not so much changing, really, which is quite interesting. Here is just some example then. This is one which we call the flower wreck, and the reason for that is that there is flower decorations on No, you can see up there. There are fantastic decoration on this ship. There is also the ropes. You can see they're extremely well preserved also. Laying. Oh, here is another one, also Ottoman, with also this decoration on the stern, on the flat stern. Before the Ottoman period is of course the Byzantine period in the Black Sea area, which also is a period where ships are important. Of course, the Byzantine period needed ships for the trade and for keeping keeping together. And we have found a couple of ships from the Byzantine period. This is a ship on 1,000 meters depth. You can see the dating up there from early medieval period or from medieval period, I should say. This is a little bit interesting wreck because it seems to be in Mediterranean construction. We think it might be a ship from Venice or even more possibly from Genoa, because Genoa was trading a lot with the Black Sea during this period. But it's very typical for that kind of shipbuilding during that period in the Mediterranean, and we were very glad to find this ship because it's really filling in some black spots regarding shipbuilding. We named it the Marco Polo wreck because we thought that this is probably a ship like Marco Polo could have sailed on. There is a small video from this ship also here. All the white stuff you see here is bacteria, sulfide bacteria, because it's absolutely no oxygen down here. So it's the only thing who can live down here is sulfide bacteria, and then when they die, you get dead bacteria all over it, like snow, really. Totally covered with that. Thousand meters down in the Black Sea. The small platform in the end of the ship with steering oar on both sides. Yep. I often, from colleagues, especially in Sweden, I get a question when I speak about what we have done in the Black Sea, about if we have found any Viking ships also. In Swedish or Nordic history writing, it's very famous that the Vikings went away following the Russian rivers down to the Byzance or to the Black Sea. It's a really big thing in Scandinavia. And we know that some Vikings did that. There is, for example, from Hagia Sophia, there have been some Vikings in Hagia Sophia doing some graffiti on the wall. And there are written sources that tells about Viking warriors then in Constantinople, or Miklagård, as the Nordic name for Constantinople was. But I think it's really it's really part of this nationalistic history writing that Scandinavian big Viking ships was carried down the rivers. I'm not sure that it worked like that. The Vikings was traveling down here, and when they came to Miklagård, to Constantinople, they met this fantastic town with city walls and warriors and armies and so on. I think Nordic Vikings were quite small down here then. I think you should see them as guest workers or something like that, more than some conquerors. But we haven't found any Viking ships. We have found some ships which is dated that period. This is a small trade ship, late 9th century, as you can see here. My colleague Krum Bashvaro is working with this ship, and he thinks it's a local Bulgarian trade ship. So he's working with a reconstruction of this ship and try to publish it. Okay, before the Byzantine period, we have of course the Roman period down here. So before the Roman Empire was split, and as you know, ships was of course extremely important also for the Roman Empire to keep the empire. It was extremely important for the cereal import, for keeping Rome alive with cereal. You had to import a lot of cereal every day, and that has to be taken on ships. On that silver denarii you can see there, it's actually a symbol for the cereal transportation to Rome. It's called Annona. And there is a ship behind the goddess there who shows how important the ship was. And we have found Roman ships. In the end of the expedition, really, we found this one on 2,000 meters depth, as you can see here. We thought it was another Ottoman. We said, oh no, another Ottoman. But when we came closer to this ship, we realized that this was something else. So this is an almost intact Roman ship. The small trade ship was, or the trade ship, I should say, was sometimes called Corbita. So I think we can call this a Corbita. We have an intact Corbita on the seafloor here. Mast still standing, the steering oar on the side. Another picture, you can actually see the interior of the ship. This very typical beam in the middle holding the mast. You can see that one on some of the Roman inscriptions and pictures, but this is the real stuff. Yeah, the same is the steering oar of the Roman ship. It's a detailed, and you can see how much this sulfide bacteria is all over the place. It's like, as I said, it's like snow. Really, it's really covered in this. Another one of the Roman ones. You have the dating there. Some pottery or amphoras on this ship. Some very interesting details away from maritime archaeology. Interesting details because we actually found a small windlass on this ship. You can see windlass on that small. To lift heavy things with. That's the earliest one I have heard about as an archaeological find anyway. We don't know where this last ship was going, but I like to think that it was on the way to the Roman colony of Deotum on the Bulgarian coast. It's not that far from where we found the ship. It was one of the Roman Black Sea colonies. And maybe there was wine and fish oil and olives on the way to the former soldiers and the veterans in living in Deotum. Yeah, and then before the Romans, we have the Greek period in the Black Sea. The Greek colonization started already 700 before Christ by the first colonies along the Black Sea coast. And we said when we started the project that maybe we can find a Greek ship that would be fantastic. And we actually did. We are down on 2,000 meters here also. The ship is laying on the side, but if you put in a picture from the famous Syrian ways, which in British Museum today, from Attica, you can actually see it's quite the same ship as you can see on the waist. That's Odysseus tied to the mast, but the ship you can see here is quite similar, really. You have the small platform, you have the mast quite in the front of the ship. You have the big steering oar. You can see the dating up there at 400 before Christ. And this is easily the most preserved wreck from this time in the world. We actually made a small excavation on this ship also, just with the ROV. So we have put a dredge on the ROV and actually make excavating there. We're able to study the details. Typical for Greek shipbuilding, also for Roman shipbuilding, was to use mortise and tenons to join the planks together. And we have a very good example of that on the planks on this ship. You can see how they were joined together with mortise and tenons. I've been teaching about that for my whole life, I was going to say, but to see it in real, it was quite fantastic, really. We don't know where this ship belongs to, but I like to think that it might be connected to today's Sosopol, which during the Greek time was known as Apollonia, where my Bulgarian colleagues still are working today quite much. We have actually been excavating inside the harbor of Sosopol, and there are very interesting Greek layers. When you have passed through the Roman and Byzantine stuff, you're coming down to Greek layers in Apollonia. And there's also a temple on the top of above the sea, overlooking the water. Yeah, just small about the practice of deep water archaeology. It's a lot of high-tech stuff, but we had a problem when we were going to try to salvage some of the amphoras and how to lift them, because we had all this fantastic technique, but we couldn't really get them up without cracking them. And then my good friend and colleague, Dr. Holmlund there, came up with an idea. So he took this toilet cleaner or rinser, or what you call it, and transformed that to a suction thing. So he have put that there, and down on 2,000 meters depth, he has actually stuck to it, and it works perfect. You didn't have to destroy anything. You just went down smooth with ROV and then lifted the amphoras. And there is Joachim, very proud with an amphora, and there is Bulgarian colleagues who also are investigating them very, very carefully there. So yeah, as an end, just some small pictures here. This is the Roman one. With all the amphoras. And this is actually laser. It's the surveyor coming there, and it's a laser LIDAR, underwater LIDAR laser beams who maps the, I think it's the Roman ship here, it's actually mapping. It's a little bit difficult to take this picture because you actually have to have the other ROV, of course, filming the surveyor, and it's so it's quite a lot of. Yeah, that was the small visit to the deep water. So.